My mother-in-law made my life hell for 3 years. So I exposed her drug addiction at my father-in-law's funeral. You won't believe what I did when I finally had enough of my evil mother-in-law's torment. At her husband's funeral, in front of 200 family members and friends, I exposed her secret drug addiction and revealed how she had been stealing money from her dying husband's medical fund to pay for cocaine. By the time I finished speaking, she was arrested, disowned by the entire family, and lost everything she had spent years trying to control. But let me tell you how 3 years of psychological warfare led to the most satisfying revenge you've ever heard. My name is Amanda, and 3 years ago, I married the love of my life, Kevin. He was everything I had ever wanted in a husband: kind, loving, successful, and completely devoted to me. The only problem was his mother, Patricia, who made it clear from our very first meeting that she thought I wasn't good enough for her precious son. Patricia was one of those women who had built her entire identity around being the most important woman in Kevin's life. She was manipulative, controlling, and absolutely vicious to any woman who threatened her position. When Kevin and I got engaged, Patricia declared war on me, and for 3 years, she made my life an absolute nightmare. It started small. Patricia would make little comments about my appearance, my job, or my family background whenever Kevin wasn't around. She would forget to invite me to family gatherings, tell Kevin that I had declined invitations I never received, and constantly undermine my relationship with her son. Kevin deserves someone more sophisticated, she would say when she thought I couldn't hear. Amanda is just so ordinary. I don't understand what he sees in her. But Patricia was clever about her cruelty. She never said anything directly insulting when Kevin was present. Instead, she would make backhanded comments disguised as concern or helpful suggestions. "Amanda, dear," she would say sweetly in front of Kevin, "have you considered doing something different with your hair? I know this wonderful stylist who could help you look more polished." Or she would comment on my cooking by saying, "Oh, Amanda tried so hard with dinner tonight. It's such a shame it didn't turn out better. Don't worry, sweetie. Cooking is a skill that takes years to develop." Kevin, being a loving son who couldn't imagine his mother being deliberately cruel, would tell me that I was being too sensitive or misunderstanding her intentions. This made me feel crazy and isolated, like I was the only one who could see what Patricia was really doing. The psychological warfare escalated after Kevin and I got married. Patricia had hoped that Kevin would call off the wedding, but when that didn't happen, she decided to make our marriage as difficult as possible. She would show up at our house unannounced, rearrange our furniture, and criticize everything from my housekeeping to my career choices. Patricia was particularly cruel about the fact that Kevin and I were struggling to get pregnant. She would make comments about how some women just aren't meant to be mothers, and would constantly ask Kevin when he was going to give her grandchildren, as if our fertility struggles were somehow my fault. Maybe Amanda should see a specialist, she would suggest loudly at family dinners. At her age, these things become more difficult. "Kevin, you might want to consider your options while you still have time." The comments about my age were especially hurtful because I was only 28, but Patricia talked about me like I was approaching menopause. She would also make subtle threats about Kevin finding someone younger and more fertile if I couldn't give him children. But Patricia's cruelest weapon was her ability to manipulate Kevin's emotions and turn him against me. She would call him crying about imaginary health problems whenever we had plans together, forcing Kevin to cancel our dates to take care of her. She would claim to be having panic attacks or chest pains that mysteriously disappeared as soon as Kevin arrived at her house. Patricia also had a talent for creating drama at the worst possible moments. On our first wedding anniversary, she called Kevin at midnight claiming that she had fallen and couldn't get up. Kevin rushed over to find her perfectly fine, sitting in her living room with a glass of wine. She claimed that she had recovered just before he arrived, but she was so grateful that he had dropped everything to help her. "Your mother is unbelievable," I told Kevin when he got home at 3 a.m. She ruined our anniversary dinner and our entire evening because she wanted attention. But Kevin defended his mother, as always. "She's getting older, Amanda. She lives alone and gets scared sometimes. Can't you be more understanding?" Patricia's manipulation was so effective that Kevin started to see me as the problem in our marriage. He thought I was jealous of his relationship with his mother and that I was trying to come between them. The more I complained about Patricia's behavior, the more Kevin pulled away from me and closer to her. Things reached a breaking point when Patricia convinced Kevin to give her a key to our house for emergencies. I came home from work one day to find Patricia in our bedroom, going through my dresser drawers and closet. "What are you doing?" I demanded, catching her red-handed with my personal belongings. Patricia didn't even look embarrassed. "I was looking for something nice for you to wear to the charity luncheon tomorrow," she said calmly. "Kevin mentioned that you were planning to wear that blue dress, and I thought you might want to reconsider. It's not very flattering on your figure." I hadn't even known about a charity luncheon, which meant Patricia had once again forgotten to tell me about a family event. But more importantly, she had violated my privacy and was now criticizing my appearance while standing in my own bedroom. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Get out of my house right now." Patricia smiled sweetly. "Now, Amanda, there's no need to get hysterical. I'm just trying to help you make a good impression on Kevin's colleagues. Image is so important in his line of work." When Kevin came home that evening, Patricia had already called him to complain that I had been aggressive and hostile toward her when she was just trying to be helpful. Kevin was angry with me before he even heard my side of the story. "My mother was trying to do something nice for you," Kevin said when I explained what had happened. "Why do you always have to turn everything into a fight?" "Kevin, she was going through my underwear drawer," I said. "She had no right to be in our bedroom, going through my personal things." But Kevin didn't seem to understand why this was a violation. "She's family, Amanda. She wasn't trying to hurt you. She was trying to help you pick out something appropriate to wear." That night, I realized that Patricia's campaign to destroy my marriage was working. Kevin was so completely under her influence that he couldn't see how inappropriate and manipulative her behavior was. I felt like I was losing my husband to his toxic mother, and I didn't know how to fight back. But I was about to discover that Patricia had a secret that would change everything. 2 months after the bedroom incident, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Patricia's neighbor, Mrs. Chun. We had met a few times at family gatherings, and she seemed like a nice, observant woman. "Amanda, dear," Mrs. Chun said, looking around nervously. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but is Patricia doing all right? I've been worried about her lately." I was surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Chin hesitated before continuing. "Well, she's been having a lot of visitors at odd hours. Young men coming and going at all times of the night. And there have been some strange sounds coming from her house." I didn't want to pry, but I was wondering if she might be having some kind of trouble. I thanked Mrs. Chun for her concern and told her I would check on Patricia, but internally, I was confused. Patricia had never mentioned having any kind of social life or male friends. Kevin and I were under the impression that she spent most of her time alone, which was why she was always calling Kevin for help and attention. That weekend, I decided to drive by Patricia's house to see what Mrs. Chun might have been talking about. What I saw shocked me. There was a steady stream of young men going in and out of Patricia's house, staying for only 15 or 20 minutes at a time. The visitors looked rough, like the kind of people Patricia would normally cross the street to avoid. I sat in my car for 2 hours, watching the traffic at Patricia's house, and I realized that something illegal was definitely going on. The pattern of short visits from multiple people was classic drug-dealing behavior, but I couldn't believe that Patricia, with her perfect housewife image and constant moral lectures, could be involved in anything like that. But as I watched, I saw Patricia herself come to the doors several times to let people in. She looked different than she did at family gatherings, disheveled, paranoid, and constantly checking the street for police or neighbors. This was not the composed, manipulative woman who had been tormenting me for 3 years. Over the next month, I started paying closer attention to Patricia's behavior during family visits. I noticed that she would disappear to the bathroom frequently, often returning with renewed energy and a slightly manic edge to her personality. She would talk rapidly, jump from topic to topic, and sometimes seemed almost euphoric before crashing into exhaustion. I also noticed that Patricia always had cash on hand, despite claiming to be on a fixed income from her late husband's pension. She would pull out hundreds of dollars for restaurants, shopping trips, and emergencies, but would complain about not being able to afford basic necessities when she wanted Kevin's financial help. The pieces were starting to come together, but I needed concrete proof before I could expose Patricia's secret life. I decided to hire a private investigator to document her activities and find out exactly what she was doing when she wasn't playing the role of the grieving widow and concerned mother. What the investigator discovered was worse than I had imagined. Patricia was not just using drugs, she was dealing them. She had been running a cocaine operation out of her house for over 2 years, using her respectable widow image as cover for a fairly substantial drug business. But the most shocking revelation was where Patricia was getting the money to buy her initial drug inventory. The private investigator had followed her to the bank several times and discovered that she was systematically stealing money from a medical fund that Kevin had set up for his father's cancer treatment. Kevin's father, Robert, had been battling cancer for the past year. Kevin had been sending his mother thousands of dollars every month to help pay for his father's medical expenses, medications, and treatments. Kevin thought he was being a loving son, helping his parents through a difficult time. But Patricia had been using that money to fund her drug dealing operation. She was literally stealing from her dying husband's medical fund to buy cocaine that she was selling to young addicts. The level of evil was breathtaking. I now had evidence that Patricia was not only a drug dealer, but also a thief who was stealing from her own family. Kevin had been working overtime and taking out loans to help pay for his father's medical care, while Patricia was using that same money to buy drugs. But I wanted to wait for the perfect moment to expose Patricia's crimes. I wanted her to face consequences that matched the 3 years of psychological torture she had put me through. The opportunity came when Robert's condition took a turn for the worse. Robert passed away on a Thursday morning in November. Kevin was devastated by the loss of his father, and Patricia played the role of the grieving widow perfectly. She was dramatic, emotional, and constantly needed Kevin's support and attention during the funeral planning process. Patricia insisted on planning an elaborate funeral with hundreds of guests, claiming that Robert deserved a celebration worthy of his wonderful life. She wanted an expensive casket, a large reception, and memorial donations to be made in Robert's name. "Your father was such a generous man," Patricia told Kevin as they planned the service. "He always put family first, and would have wanted us to honor his memory properly, no matter what it costs." The irony was sickening. Patricia was using Robert's death as another opportunity to manipulate Kevin and extract more money from him, while she had been stealing from Robert's medical fund for months. The funeral was scheduled for the following Saturday, and Patricia had invited over 200 people to attend. It was going to be the largest gathering of the extended family that had happened in years, with relatives coming from out of state and Robert's former colleagues and friends paying their respects. I realized that the funeral would be the perfect stage for exposing Patricia's crimes. She would be surrounded by everyone who mattered to her: family members, church friends, neighbors, and community leaders who respected her as the devoted wife and mother. Her humiliation would be complete and public. But I wanted to make sure that Patricia couldn't deny or minimize her crimes when I revealed them. I spent the week before the funeral gathering additional evidence and preparing a presentation that would leave no doubt about what she had been doing. The private investigator had provided me with photos of Patricia meeting with drug dealers, video footage of the constant traffic at her house, and financial records showing the theft from Robert's medical fund. I also had testimony from Mrs. Chun and other neighbors who had witnessed Patricia's suspicious activities. Most importantly, I had contacted the police and arranged for them to be present at the funeral. Detective Morrison, who specialized in drug crimes, was going to be in the audience when I made my revelation. Patricia would be arrested immediately after I finished speaking. The morning of the funeral, I got dressed in my most respectful black outfit and prepared for the performance of my life. Patricia had spent 3 years making my life miserable, manipulating my husband, and destroying my marriage with her psychological warfare. Today, she was going to pay for every cruel comment, every manipulation, and every moment of pain she had caused. The funeral service was beautiful and emotional. Kevin gave a touching eulogy about his father's kindness, generosity, and love for his family. Patricia played her role perfectly, dabbing her eyes with tissues and accepting condolences from the crowd of mourners. After the formal service, the reception was held in the church's fellowship hall. Patricia was surrounded by family and friends, receiving sympathy and praise for how well she was handling her grief. People kept commenting on what a devoted wife she had been and how much Robert had appreciated her care during his illness. "Patricia is such a strong woman," I heard Kevin's aunt saying to a group of relatives. "She sacrificed so much to take care of Robert during his cancer treatment. She's truly an inspiration." I waited until most people had finished eating and the crowd was settled in for the memorial speeches and remembrances. Patricia was sitting in the front row, surrounded by Kevin's siblings and other close family members. Kevin was standing near the podium, preparing to invite people to share their memories of his father. That's when I approached the microphone and asked if I could say a few words about Robert and the family. Kevin looked surprised but nodded, probably thinking I was going to say something supportive about Patricia during her time of grief. Thank you all for being here today to honor Robert's memory. I began, looking out at the crowd of mourners. Robert was truly a generous and loving man who always put his family first. He worked hard his entire life to provide for Patricia and his children, and even during his battle with cancer, his primary concern was making sure his family would be taken care of after he was gone. The audience was listening respectfully, and Patricia was smiling tearfully, probably expecting me to praise her devotion and sacrifice. Robert's generosity and love for his family was so great that he never would have wanted them to struggle financially during his illness. I continued. That's why Kevin has been sending thousands of dollars every month for the past year to help pay for Robert's medical expenses and medications. Kevin nodded from the side of the room, probably wondering where I was going with this. Kevin has worked overtime, taken out loans, and sacrificed his own financial security because he wanted to make sure his father received the best possible care, I said, my voice getting stronger. He believed that every dollar he sent was going directly to help Robert fight his cancer. Patricia's smile was starting to fade as she sensed that my speech was taking an unexpected direction. But today, I have some information about where that money actually went, I said, pulling out a folder of documents. Information that I think Robert's family and friends deserve to know as we remember his life and legacy. The room had gone completely quiet. People could sense that something dramatic was about to happen, and all eyes were focused on me. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, I have evidence that Patricia has been stealing money from Robert's medical fund for over 2 years. Money that Kevin thought was paying for his father's cancer treatment was actually being used to buy cocaine that Patricia has been dealing out of her house. The gasp that went through the room was audible. Patricia shot up from her chair, her face white with shock and panic. That's a lie, Patricia screamed. Amanda is mentally ill. She's been trying to destroy our family for years. But I wasn't finished. I held up photographs that clearly showed Patricia meeting with known drug dealers and accepting packages of cocaine. I have photos of Patricia conducting drug transactions, I announced. I have video footage of the constant stream of addicts going in and out of her house. I have financial records showing that she systematically stole over $30,000 from the fund that was supposed to pay for Robert's medical care. Kevin looked like he was going to be sick. His siblings were staring at Patricia with shock and horror. The entire room was in chaos as people tried to process what they were hearing. Patricia wasn't taking care of Robert during his illness, I continued. She was letting him suffer while she used his medical money to fund a cocaine dealing operation. Robert died not knowing that his own wife was stealing from him while he was fighting for his life. Patricia tried to run toward the exit, but Detective Morrison, who had been waiting in the back of the room, stepped forward to block her path. Patricia Henderson, Detective Morrison announced, "You're under arrest for drug trafficking, theft, and fraud." As the detective read Patricia her rights and handcuffed her in front of 200 family members and friends, Kevin's siblings were crying. Other family members were demanding to see the evidence, and Patricia was screaming about how I had ruined her life. "This is all Amanda's fault," Patricia shouted as she was being led away. "She's been jealous of me for years, and she's making all of this up." But the evidence spoke for itself. The photographs, financial records, and witness testimony made it clear that Patricia had been living a double life for years. The devoted mother and grieving widow act had been covering up a criminal enterprise that had literally stolen money from her dying husband. As Patricia was taken away in handcuffs, Kevin approached me with tears in his eyes. "Amanda," he said, his voice breaking, "I am so sorry. I had no idea. I should have listened to you. I should have seen what she was doing." For 3 years, Kevin had defended his mother against every complaint I had made about her behavior. He had dismissed my concerns, minimized her cruelty, and made me feel like I was the problem in our marriage. Now he was finally seeing Patricia for what she really was, but it was almost too late. "Kevin," I said quietly, "your mother didn't just steal money. She stole 3 years of our marriage. She turned you against me, made you choose her over me constantly, and nearly destroyed our relationship with her manipulation. Kevin nodded miserably. I know. I was so blind. I thought she was just lonely and needed my help. I never imagined she could be capable of something like this. The aftermath of Patricia's arrest was swift and devastating for her. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was facing multiple felony charges that could result in decades in prison. But beyond the legal consequences, Patricia had lost everything she had spent years trying to control. Kevin's siblings refused to have any contact with her after learning about the theft from their father's medical fund. They were horrified that Patricia had let Robert suffer while she was stealing money that could have paid for better treatment or pain medications. The extended family disowned Patricia completely. Relatives who had respected her as a devoted wife and mother were disgusted by the revelation that she had been a drug dealer who stole from her dying husband. Her reputation in the community was destroyed overnight. Most importantly for me, Kevin finally understood what his mother had been doing to our marriage. He realized that her constant demands for attention, her manipulation tactics, and her psychological warfare against me had all been part of a pattern of selfish, destructive behavior. I can't believe I let her come between us, Kevin told me as we sat in our living room the night after the funeral. I can't believe I defended her when she was being so cruel to you. Kevin and I spent months in marriage counseling, working through the damage that Patricia's manipulation had caused to our relationship. It was hard work, but we both committed to rebuilding our marriage on a foundation of trust and mutual support rather than the toxic dynamic that Patricia had created. 6 months after Patricia's arrest, she was sentenced to 8 years in prison for drug trafficking, theft, and fraud. She would be 67 years old when she was released, with no family, no money, and no reputation to return to. During the sentencing hearing, Kevin gave a victim impact statement that brought tears to my eyes. Your Honor, Kevin said, addressing the judge, my mother didn't just steal money from our family. She stole years of our lives with her lies and manipulation. She destroyed relationships, caused immeasurable emotional pain, and betrayed the trust of everyone who loved her. Kevin looked directly at Patricia as he continued. Most painfully, she poisoned my relationship with my wife, making me choose between them when I should have been protecting Amanda from the psychological abuse. My mother's crimes go far beyond the drug dealing and theft. She systematically destroyed the people who cared about her most. Patricia showed no remorse during the sentencing. She continued to claim that she was the victim, that I had fabricated evidence to frame her, and that her family was abandoning her unfairly. Even facing 8 years in prison, she couldn't take responsibility for the pain she had caused. As Kevin and I left the courthouse that day, I felt like a weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. For 3 years, Patricia had made me feel like I was crazy, jealous, and unworthy of Kevin's love. Now everyone could see exactly what kind of person she really was. But the most satisfying part of my revenge wasn't Patricia's imprisonment or public humiliation. The most satisfying part was that Kevin and I had survived her attempts to destroy our marriage, and we were stronger than ever. 2 years after Patricia's sentencing, Kevin and I welcomed our first child, a beautiful daughter named Grace. Patricia would miss her granddaughter's entire childhood while she sat in prison, paying for the choices she had made. Sometimes I wondered if Patricia understood that her cruelty and manipulation had backfired so completely. She had spent 3 years trying to drive me away from Kevin, but instead, her crimes had brought us closer together and shown Kevin exactly what kind of mother he had. Patricia had made my life hell for 3 years, but in the end, her own evil had destroyed her life while making mine better than ever. She had lost everything: her freedom, her family, her reputation, and her future, while I had gained a stronger marriage, a deeper appreciation for my husband, and the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. The woman who had called me unworthy and tried to steal my husband was now wearing an orange jumpsuit and eating prison food, while I was living in our beautiful home with a husband who finally understood my worth and the daughter Patricia would never get to know. That was the most perfect revenge I could have ever imagined.